All right, welcome to Touchdown Talks. I'm Spencer Taylor. This is going to be a pre-wildcard week video. Going to be doing a quick reaction to some 2025 off-season news, as more than half of the league is into the off-season already. So we have some news there to go over, and then also going to give a quick sort of preview of Wildcard Weekend and my thoughts. And we're going to go through even a little bracket here that I'll have to show for you. But before I go into that, please, if you enjoy NFL content and if you want to be following what's going on around the NFL, including during the offseason, you're interested in trades, in free agent signings, all that, the draft. If you're interested in anything like that, you're sad that football's ending, you want to still keep up on what's going on, I'm your guy. I'll keep you up to date. Anything you're interested in as far as discussions, things like that, let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to hit subscribe, the notification bell. That'll help make sure you don't miss any videos. And please leave a like rating to let me know if you enjoyed this content. And without further ado, let's get right on into it. So as mentioned, I first want to go into some news as we start this video. So of course, first off, the first thing in the news to bring up, Monday, the final game of Wildcard Weekend, which will be the Rams hosting the Vikings. Unfortunately, it's going to be pretty much a neutral site game at this point, not a home game for the Rams. Of course, certainly closer to where they hail from than the Vikings, but it'll still be a neutral site game, and that is, of course, because of the wildfire situation that is going on around LA. A very difficult situation. Definitely feel for those who are in LA, and pray and hope for your safety. Obviously, that's number one priority right now in that area. But because of the safety issues and concerns there, the game for Monday night, which had been scheduled to be in Inglewood, California, right there in LA, the game is being relocated. It'll still be played at the same time, so 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as you'll see here. And this was the NFL's announcement of the change, but they will be relocating the game. It'll be still the same time. You'll be able to watch it on the same platforms, ESPN, ABC, etc. But as far as going to the game, it is no longer going to be in LA. Instead, it's going to be in Phoenix, Arizona. So, unfortunate situation going on in LA right now. And so, of course, NFL having to react. Games still go on. So, certainly pray for the safety of those in LA and hope that these fires get under control soon. But regardless of what happens there, the game for Monday has been relocated to Arizona. So that's first bit of news as far as wildcard news. And then some 2025 off-season news. This is the list, well, really an incomplete list, or out-of-date list from a couple days ago, of the head coaching and general manager positions open in the league now that we've been past Black Monday, as they call it, and we're into the offseason for a few of these teams. So for general managers, Jets, Titans, those are two openings. The Raiders also just fired their general manager today. And then 2 days prior to that, the Raiders had fired O'Connell. So the Raiders need both a head coach and a general manager. And then you see the same with the Jets. They're cleaning house there as well. And then from there on, you got the Titans needing a GM, and then you got the rest of this list of teams needing a head coach: Jaguars, Bears, Saints, Patriots. Of course, there's been a lot of names thrown around there. Rumors are, it certainly sounds like a lot of people think. Mike Vrabel generally being talked about as the top candidate outside of maybe a Ben Johnson, Lions offensive coordinator. Vrabel, it's been heavily rumored that people think that he may end up at either the Patriots or with the Raiders now, because, of course, with the Patriots, he played there, has history there, and then with the Raiders, Tom Brady is a minority owner with the Raiders, and it's been reported that he's going to have some influence on the coaching and general managing positions for the Raiders. So it seems very logical that Tom Brady might reach out to Mike Vrabel, who he has history with from their days together in New England. So very possible that even Tom Brady tries to recruit Vrabel to go to the Raiders. Of course, Bears fans, including myself, some might be interested in the Bears trying to go after Vrabel. They did do an interview with him on the 8th, on Wednesday, but that's one of many interviews that the Bears have already done, and they've got many more lined up. I'll go more into that later, but so yeah, there's Vrabel. He's really kind of the top candidate, and then Ben Johnson, of course, that's the next one that's mostly talked about. Certainly some interviews lined up, including with the Bears already. I believe the Bears are going to be interviewing him on Saturday, if I remember right. But yeah, so these are the openings as they sit right now, adding the Raiders down here for general manager. So, we'll have to see as far as playoff teams that could make changes. There's certainly some. Obviously, one of the names that you would maybe expect to see here would be the Cowboys. They are obviously not in the playoffs, but they haven't fired Kevin McCarthy. But McCarthy's contract ends here middle of next week, or this upcoming week. And so, the question has been, would they just let him go and try to hire a new coach, or would they re-sign him? Signs seem to be pointing towards they're going to bring him back. For one, Jerry Jones for weeks now has been pretty much revealing his cards and talking very positively about Mike McCarthy, which, my apologies, I said Kevin McCarthy earlier. I'm not sure why I said that, but Mike McCarthy, it sounded over the last few weeks like Jerry Jones wants to bring McCarthy back. And then another reason why signs seem to be pointing towards them keeping him is that a couple days ago, the Chicago Bears put out a request to the Cowboys for permission to interview Mike McCarthy, since he is technically still under contract for the next week. And the Cowboys declined their request. So that seems to suggest, if you're going to decline the Bears' request to interview him, chances are you're probably intending to resign him as your own coach. Otherwise, wouldn't make a ton of sense to do that. I mean, it could be that, hey, maybe the Cowboys are just playing gamesmanship here, and they're just, they're planning on letting McCarthy's deal expire, but they want to give themselves an extra week to think about it, and they also want to force the Bears to have to wait a week if they really want to talk to McCarthy. Sure, that could be it, but I highly doubt that. I would assume that if they're not hiring, or I would assume that if they're declining the Bears' request, it certainly suggests they're probably working on some kind of deal with McCarthy. So I do expect he will be back for the Cowboys, and he'll no longer be an option. And then going into other stuff, specifically looking at the Bears with their coaching search, I wanted to highlight this, courtesy of the Herd, obviously, as you can see here. But this list, really well compiled. This is a list of at least a majority, minus one pretty big name who they're interviewing. But tons of names here. Quite a few of these you probably don't even recognize, or wouldn't have even predicted would be, a part of the coaching search pool for any teams. But there they are. I've been telling myself all week, as the reports have been coming out, that the Bears are going to interview this person, and they've requested to interview this person with this team. I keep telling myself, glass half full. The Bears are just trying to be thorough. They're being thorough with their search, but unfortunately, another well-known fact about the Bears over the last decade plus under George McCaskey is that they tend to like to go with the candidates that are way out of left field. Nobody was talking about them, not the number one or two guy on anybody's lists as far as available coaches or coordinators. The Bears seem to have a knack for going for some guy that that nobody was talking about, that's not in the league, or that's, a coordinator that maybe would have been 3 or 4 on somebody's list. Yeah, I mean, these are some good coordinators, but again, a lot of these, Mike Kafka, the Giants, Anthony Weaver, who would have been guessing that one? Drew Petzing, a lot of these, Ben Johnson, of course, makes sense. Aaron Glenn, the Lions defense, even though they've had a ton of injuries on the defense, they played pretty well for that, and certainly they had a good showing this past week against the Vikings at home. But, really, as a Bears fan, I kind of wish this list could be shrunk pretty quick, and I hope they do, down to the names that we want to see on here. Of course, we do have Mike McCarthy's name on here, but as I mentioned, that request did get declined. Most of the rest of these, of course, have been accepted, and they've already begun work on interviewing. The other name that I was hinting at that is not on here is Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll came out a few days ago. It was reported that he was interested in specifically coming back as the Bears head coach. And with that, the Bears did decide to go ahead and interview him. And I believe they either interviewed him Wednesday or they're interviewing him Saturday. I could be wrong on that, or it was Thursday. Either way, within this week, they plan to or have interviewed him. As a matter of fact, I think they did interview him Thursday. So they've interviewed him. From what I've heard from reports too, at least the Bears anyway, the way they're choosing to do this first round of interviews that they're doing all of them over Zoom. It is a rule that if you are interviewing a coordinator who is on a team in the playoffs, Ben Johnson, for example, those coordinators, you can only interview them over Zoom, can't bring them in person. But coaches or coordinators such as a Mike Vrabel, Pete Carroll, those guys actually can be brought in person technically now. But the Bears, according to reports, have chosen to just across the board for the first round of interviews, they're going to do all of them over Zoom. I don't know if that's the Bears being cheap. I don't know if that's the Bears, just trying to make it uniform across the board for the first round of interviews. Whatever it is. But yeah, I really hope they quickly come to the pretty easy conclusion and whittle it down to, I'd love them to whittle it down to Pete Carroll, Ben Johnson, Mike McCarthy if things don't work out there, Mike Vrabel, maybe an Aaron Glenn or something like that. But otherwise, the rest of these coordinators you're seeing here on this list, I would prefer that the Bears don't go with those. I'm very much on the side of I want the Bears to, if they can, sure, I want them to find a coach that can work with Caleb Williams, that can build things around him. But not only that, it's, and sure, everybody loves the scheme guy, the new young offensive up-and-coming coach, which, of course, Ben Johnson is that. So if the Bears went that way, I would be okay with that. But personally, I am kind of on the side that a lot of people have been talking about. That is, I kind of would like to see the Bears go for a coach who can not only improve the team, but improve the team through culture. The Bears obviously have massively struggled over the last few years. Certainly in the 12-ish years now that they have been under the chairman of George McCaskey as the chairman. Bears have been, very desolate when it comes to winning seasons, making it to the playoffs. They've been to the playoffs twice and lost in the wild card both times. Both were under head coach Matt Nagy. Outside of that, they have not been to the playoffs at all. In basically 12, 13 years. That I think it's been, if I remember right, it's been 10 or 4, somewhere between 10 and 14 years since the Bears have won a playoff game, which is just, it's painful. But yeah, I just, to me, I think the Bears need, not only do they need improvements, just across the board, but part of that is they need the culture to be changed. They need somebody who is a proven already has experience head coaching. I don't want the Bears to, again, they have, over the last few recent years, it's been their thing to go for first-time head coaches that are out of the blue that nobody would have expected an NFL team to hire that offseason. This is the team of Chicago, one of the biggest cities in the country, one of the biggest cities in the world. Chicago sports have been pretty bad recently, and the city of Chicago and Bears fans abroad deserve better, in my opinion. Easy for me to say being that I am a Bears fan, but again, certainly even just the city itself, having gotten to visit Chicago for the first time a few months ago, I feel bad that Chicago has such bad sports teams so often recently. The city deserves more. It's a huge TV market for the NFL, but yeah, this franchise has just drug Bears fans through the mud over the last few decades, and I just, for a franchise of that caliber, I just wish the ownership was a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more wealthy and ready to spend when it comes to coaching. That's part of been their problem over the years, and part of why sometimes they go for these out of left field guys is that they're cheaper. So I'm worried that that's gonna come about again here, but I really do hope that the Bears can find a coach. Again, even if it's a Pete Carroll. Yes, my concern with Pete Carroll is that you might only be getting him for a couple years. 2, 3, 5 certainly probably is max. He's up there in age, so. But I mean, for his age, certainly Pete Carroll is always seems very spry and ton of energy for his age. But again, he would be a hire that you might not be able to expect him to hang around forever. But again, I would be okay with a hire like that because I know Pete Carroll has a history of coaching in the NFL for a long, long time. He's won playoff games. He's been to a Super Bowl. Like, he's got the caliber. He's won championships. The guy has experience. That's also why Mike McCarthy, if the Bears were allowed to interview him and could get anywhere with him, Mike McCarthy's another one. He's won a Super Bowl. He has history with that. One of the retorts I hear with Mike McCarthy, of course, is that he's had a lot of good quarterbacks, but his offenses are underrated in my opinion. But yeah, anyways, that's my little spiel on the Bears coaching search at the moment. But before we end this video, I want to now go into my predictions for Wildcard weekend. We're going to have full screen here for this. So this is going to be on ESPN, where I'm going to make my picks. And so I'm going to, right here for this video, we're going to kind of do my picks for my first bracket. I'm going to do 2 brackets. One I'll do later. Before I go into making a bracket, I do want to mention that this group here on ESPN, if you go to ESPN Fantasy, I will have a link down below, but I've created a group, Touchdown Talks NFL Bracket Competition, and I'm going to have a link to, if you want to join it and you want to make a bracket and enter it into this group, you can do that, and then that way anybody that is a viewer here of Touchdown Talks, we can see how people's brackets do and see who ends up being the winner. But yeah, so with that, again, you'll be able to find that link down below. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to quickly make my picks. So starting off, of course, with Wildcard weekend, our first game of the weekend is going to be, we have, let's see here. So we're starting off here in the AFC, and we start off with Texans hosting the Chargers. I think the Chargers go in and win this one. And then Saturday Night Football, I've got the Ravens winning this one. Very concerned about the Steelers, although I do think they could keep it much closer than people think. Certainly at least cover the spread. Bills at the Broncos, I think this is an easy out for the Bills at home, cold weather. We know their stadium where they play this time of year is pretty good home field advantage for them. And then going over here to the NFC side, we start off with the Eagles hosting the Packers. We saw these two teams play in Week 1 in Brazil, and the Packers won it by a pretty good margin. Really, the only thing that even kept the Packers in the game and kept it relatively close, at least as close as it was because there were a handful of turnovers from the Eagles. But otherwise, the Eagles pretty much controlled the game. But there were turnovers on both sides, if I recall. But I think reporting I've seen most recently is that Jalen Hurts is back to practicing in limited capacity, but that means he should be out of concussion protocol, which is really was the biggest concern for me coming into this week. So Hurts should be back, which means the Eagles should be healthy. And if they can run the ball, I think they'll do just fine running it with Saquon, doing, quarterbacks, the tush push. I think they'll win it at home. The Packers haven't looked that great really this last month. Just lost to my Bears in Week 18, and it wasn't like they weren't trying either. They were trying to win that game. Winning it, had the Commanders lost, winning it, the Packers could have found themselves in the 6th seed, but so they were definitely trying to win it, but they were unable to, and even outside of the Bears game, they've really just not looked the greatest this last month. So I do have the Eagles winning it at home. Buccaneers, Commanders, this one's a tough one. Not the toughest one to pick for me, but I think I'm going to go with the Commanders. They're just, of the two teams, the groups they've got there, the quarterbacks, the coaches, the roster, the Bucs have way more experience in recent years with making it to the playoffs. The Commanders, great story. Jaden Daniels probably going to win Rookie of the Year, and deservedly so. And I do think the Commanders are, I think the Commanders are this year's Texans. I think we'll see them in the playoffs again next year, possibly improved. I know the Texans had a bit of a dip this year, but whether they do something like that or they even slightly improve like we expected the Texans to do, I do think the Commanders are going to be contenders. I like what they've got going with Dan Quinn as the head coach, and then with Jaden Daniels at quarterback. They've got some good pieces, but so they earned themselves a spot. I think this is an interesting game, but Baker Mayfield, the way he's playing, his connection with Mike Evans, the roster they've got there, it's a franchise that they've won their division, I think, all of the last 6 years, if I remember right. Of course, some of that was under Brady, but they made the playoffs at least the last 6 years. They had a Super Bowl with Brady, and even since Brady left and it's been Baker Mayfield, he has looked no better than he has since he got with the Buccaneers, and this year's been no different. He's had multiple games with 300 plus yards, tons of touchdowns. He does still give you about one pick at least per game, which has sometimes costed the Buccaneers, but usually they're able to move the ball well enough and play good enough defense that they're able to overcome a turnover or two here or there. So I do think the Buccaneers win at home. And then Rams, Vikings. This one's a tough one. Unfortunately, before the relocation news came out and all this stuff that's been going on with LA, I was leaning towards picking the Rams winning this. Now that the game is being relocated to Arizona, I'm actually going with the Vikings here. I do think this is going to be a very close game. I know everybody was, certainly concerned by what we saw against the Lions last week with Sam Darnold. Kind of went pumpkin mode, but I kind of think in a way that might be a bit of a one-off. The Rams have, the last couple of years, including this year, sometimes they look really good, sometimes they don't. I don't know. On offense, of course, Stafford is still pretty good, but he's an older quarterback, and on offense, they're really reliant on him and Puka Nacua. Cooper Kupp at this point is pretty much a blocking receiver. He's not a deep threat or anything like that anymore. So they're really, at receiver, they're very dependent on Puka Nacua going off. Otherwise, they got nothing. So I do think, especially with the relocation, it now will be closer to a neutral site game. Of course, in LA, there probably would have been tons of Vikings fans anyways. That's kind of how games at SoFi go. But being that it is now a game with travel involved for both teams, I've got the Vikings winning this one. So then we'll bounce back over here. We'll start with the Bills hosting the Ravens. This one could be a very interesting one. Bills would be at home. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. This one would be a really fun game. And honestly, it's tough to pick. I'm not sure. I mean, we'd have to see health stuff. But for right now, for this bracket to kind of hurry things up, I'm going to take the Ravens to win it here. I think they win, close fashion. I have a feeling the Ravens have a chance to be dangerous, but I'm also nervous about the Ravens getting tight and, making mistakes like they have in the last few years since Lamar Jackson's gotten into the league. That's kind of how they've fallen out each year. They get to a certain game in the playoffs and they kind of get tight. They don't play like themselves and they eliminate themselves pretty much. Chiefs hosting the Chargers. I think the Chiefs win it. They'll be off plenty of rest. 15-1 for a reason. I know they haven't. I know they've not had very many games this season scoring 31 or more points, but obviously they've won those games, so they know how to win close games. Obviously they've won 2 Super Bowls in a row. You know all that, but I've got them beating the Chargers, and then I've got the Eagles at hosting the Buccaneers. And I think I will have the Eagles winning this one. Lions, Vikings. I'd like to say that this one could be more interesting, and I think it will be. I think it'll be closer, but I do still have the Lions in this matchup. I think the Lions, unless they were to, unless they were to have some real misfortune with injuries. Although one good thing is they are going to have, according to reports, they may have David Montgomery back for this game, so that could even help them even more. And they'll be coming off their bye, so they shouldn't be any more injured coming into this than they were Week 18. So the Vikings will have just come off a tough game against the Rams on the road. Now we're going to have to go on the road again to Detroit twice in 3 weeks, basically. I think that's a lot to ask for the Vikings. So then with the NFC, AFC championships, for the NFC side, I think this one's a tough one. I'm going to go with the Lions. I don't know. I don't really trust either of these teams. Once we get to here, I think both teams deserve it. I think both teams could do it, but there's ways that I don't necessarily. There's little things here or there that I don't like about each coach. Of course, Dan Campbell. I really like Dan Campbell. He's one of my favorite coaches in the league, but of course, one of the knocks on him is that, again, sometimes with game time situations, I get it, it's the Lions' identity and his identity to go for it on 4th down, and a lot of times it actually does work out for him, but it does make me nervous. But I do think they get the win at home this year. Finally, they get into the Super Bowl, and they become, the popular team for everybody across America to cheer for, because they've never won a Super Bowl, so they will be the popular favorite to win this. Chiefs, Ravens. This one's a tough one, but I think this is the game that I was hinting at with the Ravens. I think they get tight. It happened last year for the Ravens. That was how they were eliminated. I think, again, whatever it may be, I think, and, this week Lamar Jackson, even in an interview, he even mentioned that, yes, he's gotten tight in previous seasons when it's come to the playoffs, and that's been why. And he said that he's going to do better this season, but yeah, I think the Chiefs win at home. And then our Super Bowl in New Orleans, February 9th, we have the Chiefs versus the Lions. And I'm going to make 2 brackets. If you join this ESPN group I've created, you'll have 2 entries you can make, so 2 different brackets for even more chance to win or double the chance to look stupid. And you go ahead and laugh at me when I'm wrong here. Don't hate me for this. I think this is a really fun game. Again, This will be the villains versus everybody's heroes. Everybody's going to be wanting to cheer for the Lions, of course. But I think, unfortunately, the villains get the win here. I think the Chiefs get the three-peat, which I've said it before. I'm not the biggest Chiefs hater. I understand why people are fatigued of them, want them to go away, want them to, all the Taylor Swift stuff, the, Mahomes and everybody getting all the attention every year. I get it. I get why people get fatigued of dynasties, and I usually do too. But I will say, this Chiefs dynasty, there are things that I like about it. I actually kind of like Patrick Mahomes. I don't love him. I'm not a Chiefs fan, but I enjoy watching Patrick Mahomes and the way he plays. I really like Andy Reid. He seems like a really nice guy, very smart guy. So I like him as their coach. So yeah, the Chiefs, and then also for me the chance, the thought of seeing a team actually three-peat. In a way, it's gross. Like I want parity, but being that, hey, my Bears are already eliminated, so as far as parity goes for that, nothing can be done about that. So I wouldn't mind being able to say that I got to see the first ever three-peat in the NFL. So that would be a benefit, at least in my eyes. I get it. A lot of people are fatigued, and trust me, one thing I will say, if the Chiefs do get their three-peat here, next year, I will be hardcore cheering for the Chiefs to finally take an L and not make it to the Super Bowl again. Of course, I'd be more than happy if they didn't this year either. But I think this year, I still think, as odd as it might seem to some people, they're 15-1. They are that for a reason. I think they're going to make it to the Super Bowl, and they're going to win it yet again. Total score for this game, I don't know. I'm going to spitball here. It is the Super Bowl. Generally lower scoring games. Most of these playoff games are going to be lower scoring than you might think. And certainly the Super Bowl teams certainly start out tight. I think this game is going to come down to a score of, let's say, 27-24. So, somewhere around that ballpark. And that's probably a high mark, honestly. I'm going to go total score of, let's go 47 is the total score. I'll say I've got Chiefs winning it 24-23. So very close game, 1 point game. I very much think that could be the case. Again, the Chiefs have, a lot of their games have been one possession games. They don't score a ton of points. They don't blow anybody out. They do just enough to win. So that is going to be my first bracket for the Super Bowl. Chiefs plus 350 odds. I believe they're either the favorite currently. If not, it might actually be the Lions that are technically favorited in sports books to win it. Now, part of that is that the sports books, the odds, part of the reason the Lions might be favored is because just the likelihood of getting to the Super Bowl. The path for the Lions might be viewed as a little bit easier than the path for the Chiefs, having to go through either the Ravens or Bills. So I do have the Chiefs winning it in this bracket. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, as I mentioned earlier, please hit the like on this video, hit subscribe, let me know what you thought down below. Again, the link will be down there. If you want to make your own bracket and try to one-up me, you're probably smarter than I am. Join that ESPN group, create a bracket. Very easy, free. There's no money involved in this. It's just for fun. Join it, and I will see you in the next video.